This is just a video overview of the Model United Nations Club at Cheshire Academy. So this will give you an idea of if you can commit to the club for this year. So let's start just by going over generally what Model UN is. So MUN is an academic simulation of the United Nations through which delegates debate, collaborate, and attempt to solve wide-ranging international issues of immense importance. In doing so, participants develop skills in diplomacy, cooperation, and critical thinking that motivate lifelong global citizenship. And that comes from Yale's Model United Nations page. So for next year, the dates will be slightly different, but it's always the third weekend in January, and this always coincides with the SAT. So keep that in mind if you're a junior aiming to take the SAT in January. This is our end goal really in the club, is to perform well and to learn as much as we can from Yale's Model UN conference. So you're going to have to do a lot of work in November, December, and early January to prepare for the conference. You won't really have the resources that you need to do the bulk of your work until late October, when you'll be assigned a country that you'll represent. And typically we get about 1 to 3 total countries, so you'll be able to collaborate with other members of the club to determine the characteristics of your country. So the economic situation, the political situation, and your country's stance on the 2 main issues facing your committee. Your main job as a member of the Model UN Club is just to become an expert on your country and your committee's situation. Shortly after you receive your country assignment or your person assignment, you might be assigned to be an actual person, you'll get a topic guide written by Yale students that explains the 2 issues facing your country and your committee. So that should really be the starting point of your research. You need to be very thorough with that document because everybody in your committee will have read that topic guide. Sometimes the topic guide is around 12 pages, particularly if you're in a small committee. And it can be up to 50 pages. And that's actually a benefit because that means that you have more information about your situation and you'll have more common ground with the other members of your committee. So you want to just become really well versed with that material because that's the foundation from which the discussion springs forth. You can supplement the topic guide with your own research, and in another video we'll talk about how to research. One of the best ways to research is to look at the works cited at the end of the topic guide because those are the resources that the Yale students used to generate the topic guide. So all this research, becoming an expert, is going to involve a lot of reading and writing to process what you're reading. And your goal is to formulate a solution to the problem articulated in the topic guide. Here are some other tips for research. So you always want to know these basic facts about your country, and you can typically find these facts on the CIA World Factbook website. So it's the CIA World Factbook website, and that's probably going to be cited in the topic guide. If not, you could just Google CIA World Factbook and your country's name. So you want to know the economic situation of your country because that's going to affect how your country interacts with other countries in the committee. It's almost always relevant because countries are so driven by their economic situations. What kinds of resources does your country have? You want to know what the main exports of the country are and how the country runs and what resources it uses to generate revenue and income for the people in the country. Does your country have a history of wars or violence? You want to know what countries your country has conflicts with because you don't want to go into the committee saying that Palestine and Israel are going to get along swimmingly. You need to know the history of the relationships between the countries. You need to know if there's tension between the countries, if they've allied with one another in the past, or if they've been vehemently opposed to one another in the past. Does your country have allies in other countries? This you can sometimes find by looking if there are block positions on an issue. Sometimes countries articulate in a document that they are allied with respect to a specific issue that is articulated in the topic guide. Has your country signed on to any important treaties? So you just want to know, how has your country voted in the past for treaties about similar situations or resolutions about similar situations? One resource that's really great is that the UN has a website where they host all of the previously worked out resolutions from real committee sessions of the United Nations. So that's a great resource to figure out where your country has stood in the past on an issue that's at least tangentially related to the issue in the topic guide. Typically, the issues that come up in the topic guides are issues that have been relevant to your country for decades, if not centuries. So you're going to be able to find some information about how your country has dealt with this issue in the past. And then these are just some general questions about your country. One thing that I heard from students who attended last year's conference is that they wish they did less kind of generic research about their country, and they wish they did more focused research about what their country specifically thought about the topic presented in the topic guide. So these are going to be helpful questions, but I'm not actually going to go over all of these, because what I heard from the students from last year is that some of these questions might not be that relevant and might not be that pertinent to what you're aiming to write. So your main goal is to figure out, what does your country think about the topic presented in the topic guide. Sometimes you need to extrapolate and make logical inferences. Sometimes you're not going to find written in black and white what your country thinks about the topic presented in the topic guide. And these questions can help you just start collecting data points from which you can extrapolate and make an inference about what your country might do with respect to the situation presented in the topic guide. Here's the link to the CIA World Factbook, and this PowerPoint is available on our portal page for our club. And then this is just a resource that has other links to websites that will give you good information about the countries represented in the UN. Here's some more general tips for research. So you always want to figure out what your committee's purpose is. What has it done in the past? What are its powers? What is the scope of its power? Are there certain actions that the committee can't take? So for example, last year I observed UConn's World Health Organization committee, and the members of the committee articulated that certain countries would donate specific amounts of money for the purpose of educating countries about malaria. And the president of the UN club at UConn chimed in and said that articulating specific monetary amounts is not within the scope of powers of the World Health Organization. So that's just an example of an instance in which the students were writing a document and articulating that they could specify monetary amounts that could be donated, and that's just beyond the scope of the power of the World Health Organization. So you just want to know what the powers of your committee are, and you could just find that by looking online. Each committee has a website that describes the powers of the committee and what kinds of decisions they've made in the past. So those resolutions and decisions that the committee has made in the past, those can be very helpful and informative as you write your own resolution, and there'll be a separate video about what exactly a resolution is and what the parts of it should be. The members of your committee, so you definitely want to know, especially for the purpose of strategizing and getting allies, you want to know who the other members of your committee are, and you want to try to figure out which countries would be likely to be allied with me, which countries would have a problem with what my country believes, and then you want to brainstorm, how can I convince those countries that typically vote against my country's belief? How can I convince those countries that disagree with me? How can I convince them to agree with my position? How can I make it appealing to them? You can't research during the conference unless sometimes they'll have a special room where you can go and look up materials, but you aren't allowed to have electronics for the most part during the conference, with the exception of the period of the conference in which people begin writing their resolutions. Typically, the Yale students will let the delegates write on their laptops as they develop their resolutions, the working papers that eventually become the proposed solutions to the problem. So the solution to this is just to print a lot of materials and to compile those materials in a delegate binder that you hopefully have organized in some manner so that you can navigate it during the conference. This is really helpful because you don't know what direction the conference will head in. You can't predict the flow of debate and what kind of resolution proposals will come up because you don't know what the other students are going to bring to the table. So having all these resources at your disposal is going to enable you to sound very polished and well researched, and it's going to lead the stronger students to seek you out during the unmoderated caucuses. So those are times in the conference when you're allowed to just mill about and find students whose ideas have resonated with you, and you can just talk to them and begin discussing potentially developing a solution to the problem facing your committee. So that's why you just really want to have all these resources at your disposal. So you want to have the topic guide in there. You want to have past resolutions that are relevant to the topic that you're discussing. And you probably want to have a list of all the countries in the committee also, because sometimes that will help you keep notes about who's allying with you in the conference. These are just general expectations that I have for you if you are going to be a member of this club. I know that it's hard to predict how much time you'll have during the school year because you don't quite know what your workload will be, but this is the bare minimum of what I expect from you if you are to be a member of the Model UN Club. So you'll receive a digital copy of your topic guide, and I'm happy to print a hard copy for you. You could also print it in the library, and you should save this. And you should have a hard copy because you're going to need that in your delegate binder. I want you to paraphrase the topic that your committee is facing. You'll always have 2 topics, so I want you to paraphrase those once you get your topic guide. Basically within a week of getting your topic guide, I want you to paraphrase the topic in a short sentence or short paragraph. It doesn't have to be a paragraph, it could be very brief, just to show me that you're engaging with the material and that you have a vague awareness of what exactly you're going to be discussing in your committee. Because in the past, some students have signed up for the club early on in the year and committed to attending the conference, and then they haven't really followed through and engaged with the material in the way that I expect them to. I expect you to know what country you are. I expect you to know generally what the 2 topics are that your committee is researching, and I expect you to have access to that topic guide. Sometimes I find with less than a month to go before the conference that students don't know their country, their committee, or the topics being discussed in the committee, and that's not really what we want from our club. We want you to be more prepared and invested than that because you're representing the school, and we want you to get the most out of this learning opportunity. So I want you to read the topic guide at least a month prior to the conference, ideally before that, and I want you to identify 30 keywords that you should know for your topic. So for example, often committees will discuss water conservation. So if that was your topic, you'd want to know that blue gold, for example, is just a nickname for water, which just implies its value. So you just want to have terms like that identified. Or one of the keywords could just be an actual treaty, and just eventually I want you to define those terms and have that list in your delegate binder. There will always be some questions at the end of your topic guide. I want you to answer those and email that information to me so that I know that you're engaging with the material. And your position papers are going to be due to me 2 weeks before the conference, and I'll give you a date for that in the future. I want you to turn in progress throughout the time we spend together during our club time. So I definitely want to check in with you and make sure that you're making adequate progress on those position papers, because I know that it's tempting to wait until the last minute, but you're not going to generate a document that you're proud of and a document that you can successfully work off of during the conference if you wait until the last minute. And I want to see a draft of the position papers. I need to see that at least 2 weeks before the conference in order for me to give feedback to you, because we do have a pretty big group, and I want to make sure that I have time to read everyone's papers and comment effectively and thoroughly on what you've created. Ideally, I'd like you to also seek out assistance from the Writing Center, because the Writing Center has has hours during which a teacher can meet with you and review your position paper. Even if the teacher is not familiar with the topic, they at least have a general understanding of argumentation and politics and diplomacy, and they should be able to help you improve your paper, strengthen it. They should be able to ask you helpful questions that clarify your thinking. And I need all the position papers by the day of the conference, first day of the conference. You will need to turn those into the Yale students who are running the conference, and it's impossible to win an award if you don't submit a paper. Our main goal is for you guys to have a good time, for you guys to engage with these global issues, and for you to learn a lot. You can learn so much from your peers at these conferences, but many of us would be happy to also receive recognition for all that hard work, and we would love to come home with a prize or two from the conference, and we're not going to be able to do that unless we get those position papers turned in and looking polished and thorough. And then finally, I just want you to identify the ally countries that you should seek out at the conference. I guess I should also say you really want to identify the people who are going to be kind of a thorn in your side during the conference. You want to identify those countries that will disagree with you and make your job of persuading the other delegates to adopt your position difficult. Some countries are going to make your job a little bit difficult if they vehemently disagree with what you're proposing. And you should be able to find that out by looking up how countries have voted in the past on resolutions addressing your topic. One thing that's been a source of confusion over the years is the fact that you have to write 2 position papers. There are always 2 topics, so I created this visual just to really drive home the point that you have to write 2 papers in order to really be an active participant in the conference. So the papers only have to be 1 page, and we'll do another video that goes over the contents of the position paper. But the first 2/3 of it are really just summary. So that part shouldn't be that difficult. I'll just give a summary of what that should contain. So it should have information about the issue presented in the topic guide and your country's specific stance on the issue and what your country has thought in the past. And then the hard part, the 3rd paragraph, should be your proposed solution about how to address the issue. So just remember, you're going to have to write a 1 to 2 page paper for topic A and a 1 to 2 page paper for topic B. And the purpose of this is just to get you thinking about what you're going to contribute to the discussion at the conference. This is just an example of the topic guide, so it'll look like this. It's going to be on a site called Issue. Most likely that's what Yale has been using in the past, and it can be a little bit difficult, but if you're having trouble downloading your document, just reach out to me or to one of the leaders in the club and they'll help you find it. So the topic guide is between 15 and 50 pages. It'll have a lot of information about your topics and what countries have said in the past about the topic. Here are some examples. So topic A might be sovereignty intervention in Syria. It just means what role should other countries play in managing the situation in Syria? Should other countries become involved, and what ways can they become involved that are helpful and not in violation of some of the principles of the United Nations? And then topic B, political division, security crisis, and democratization process in post-revolutionary Egypt. So it just basically means what can countries outside of Egypt do along with Egypt in order to facilitate a smooth transition of leadership in Egypt. So those might sound really overwhelming, and the topic guides are typically written in a esoteric style. They're written in a style that is difficult to comprehend because they have a lot of sophisticated vocabulary terms in them. But just reach out to me, to Ms. Swift, to the Writing Center. The Writing Center can help you process a reading assignment also, because reading is part of the writing process. If you really immerse yourself in this process, you're going to learn a lot and you're just going to get better every year. And it's really going to help you if you're looking to get involved in politics, international relations, anything involving negotiating, including business or a legal career. This experience of reading this very dense document and pulling out information and extrapolating and developing your own argument, all of this is really going to serve you all in the future. And this is a great venue in which to do this work because you're not getting graded. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. Okay, so this is just a visual of what it might look like in your committee. This is right here. These are two students who are in Model UN in the past at our school. So everyone in your committee, every single person in this room has read the exact same topic guide that you read. So they're going to be offended if they reference something and you don't know the material, because you should know it. You should know that topic guide forwards and backwards by the time of the conference. And each person in this room, in this case, it was really kind of strange. Every once in a while, they'll have double delegation. So each person in this room has another student from their school who's representing the same country, but that's fairly atypical. Typically, you'll be there on your own representing one country in this committee, and it's your job to speak on behalf of the country and voice the country's views on the topic. And typically, there'll be a stage with a microphone up here, but sometimes you're expected to just project and speak at an audible level in a room like this without a microphone. So here's what that looks like. So you'll stand and give your ideas. Typically, this only lasts a minute and a half, the amount of time that you have to speak. It can be 30 seconds. That's pretty unlikely, but it's typically going to be between a minute and a half that you have to articulate your ideas succinctly in a way that connects with where the dialogue is at that point. So you really need to pay attention, and we'll talk about how to make your ideas resonate with the rest of the group. You want to make sure that you acknowledge what's been said before, and you want to try to keep notes about which countries have put forth which ideas, because ideally you want to reference the ideas that have come up already in your 1 to 1.5 minute speech. It's uncommon for them to give you more time than that, and they're going to be timing you, and they're going to bang a gavel if you go over the time, and they'll just cut you off. Okay, so just make sure that you're prepared, because you don't want to sound like this. uh, and we'll watch this video in our club time. So this is a Miss Teen America pageant contestant who couldn't answer this question in a way that was comprehensible to the crowd. So the question was just, recent polls have shown a fifth of Americans can't locate the US on a world map. Why do you think this is? And I'll just give you a minute to read this, and you could see why she would have been better off if she'd have had a better level of preparation and if she'd practiced articulating her ideas in a clearer manner. So as you can see, one real faux pas that she commits here is she says the Iraq, which just is not an accepted way that we say Iraq here. We don't say the Iraq, we say Iraq. So this is an example of the kind of thing you'd want to know, and the only way to really learn the proper terminology is to engage with the topic guide and to do your own research, typically drawing upon the sites cited in the work cited by the Yale students. Okay, so here are some other general questions you should use to research the two topics. So you want to just break it down into the different facets or sides of the issue. So you want to think about all the different ways different countries have viewed this issue in the past. You want to identify the main points of contention. What are the points of disagreement that have come up in the past with respect to this issue? And why are these points so contentious? Why are countries divided over these issues? So you want to start pretty broadly and then zero in on what your committee specifically has done and what your country specifically has done about this issue. And definitely try to find resolutions or treaties. Those should really be cited. They should be cited in the topic guide. The topic guide should mention what resolutions or treaties have been developed in the past. And then one of the best ways to develop a strong position paper and a solution to the problem is just to identify the weaknesses of past resolutions or treaties and just develop solutions, ways to fix those issues. How could you meet the needs of more countries? What could you do to fix however this past plan failed? Definitely make sure that you look at those questions to consider at the end of each topic guide. Those are the questions that the Yale students developed to get you to try to see some of the potential solutions to the problem. And then I've said it quite a few times, but just make sure that you're starting not just by Googling randomly, look at the websites that the topic guide cites, because those are the sites that the Yale students looked at to generate the topic guide. The Yale students are going to ultimately be the ones to decide who wins awards in the committee, and the Yale students are going to appreciate when delegates have done research that aligns with what the Yale students researched. So if you're saying ideas from a document that the Yale student cited, those ideas are going to resonate as true with the Yale student because the Yale student read that website in order to generate the topic guide. Okay, so here's an example of an argument about which of the two topics should be discussed first. This is always the very first question in debate. So first, the Yale student will say, can we have some students speak in favor of discussing topic A first? Can we have some students speak in favor of why topic B should be discussed first? So essentially, you always just want to say that one issue is more pressing than the other. This is one key angle to take, and this is just a really good way to get your feet wet and get some practice with public speaking and just set the tone that you're informed about what you are to be doing at the conference and you understand the logic of why one topic would be more valuable to discuss first. So here's an example of why you might argue that one topic is better to discuss first. So you might say, though the AIDS epidemic is a pressing issue, the Israel-Palestine conflict is a more pressing issue, and therefore we should discuss topic B first. So we should focus on topic B first. So this is just saying that one issue between the two topic guides is more pressing. So just remember, every committee will have two topics that the students read about and wrote about, but typically you only get to explore one topic in great depth. So you want to argue that the group should discuss the topic that you know more about or that you're more comfortable about or that you've developed a better solution for. All right, so I'm actually going to make a separate video about writing the position papers. Hopefully you feel that you have a better awareness of what Model UN is and you have a better idea of if it's a good fit for you this year. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video.